All right. It's so good to see so many people that I know. Of course, I only know most of you by your first name. As you can appreciate, more here in this room than anywhere else. Over the course, you can all relate to times where you've run into somebody that you've known and shared your most intimate secrets with. And you run into them in a restaurant, and you're with somebody else, and you run up and you give them a great big hug, and, hello, I'd like to introduce you to, and you know their first name, and, oh, how do you know this person? Oh, I've known them for years. So here we don't have to do that, and I'm just so glad to see so many of you here. Anyway, you all know the struggles and the richness of life and can appreciate the value of therapy, as David Baker said earlier, and how it can change the course and direction of not only your life, but the lives of those around you. My journey is not unique, yet it is entirely unique. As David said, I'm Karen Mitchell, and I think I've been writing this speech for about 30 years. When I asked what to speak this year, I really hesitated. David said something about Phil Masterson, who isn't here tonight, and he did a beautiful job of talking about his struggles and how he was able to turn his life around with the help of his gifted therapist, Natan Harpaz. Can be found on the IIGP website. I'm going to have a couple of plugs in here for the IIGP website. Just go on the IIGP website and you can listen to his speech from last year. It's a really beautiful story. So this is a story about the journey of therapy. I grew up in Detroit, the fourth oldest of 11 healthy children. I thought I came from a normal, loving home. We were a middle-class Catholic family. I got good grades, had friends, was bright, engaging, energetic. And something was wrong. I always felt like I was out of sync. I compared myself to others and felt I came up short. Somehow I didn't have the right clothes, the right haircut. I didn't know who the cool bands were. Everywhere I looked, I found reasons that proved that I didn't measure up. Little did I know that messages that were sent and received while I was growing up were forming a self-destructive pattern in my life. One such message, for instance, was from my mother, who told me that God probably didn't mean for me to go to college. I was out to prove her wrong. I graduated from high school, and through much determination, one of my strong suits, and hard work, I found a way to get into college and move away from home. I struggled for a year at Western Michigan University, and then came back to Detroit, got a full-time job, found an apartment, and enrolled in night school. I always knew how to make money, but already was finding the wrong type of partner. My first real boyfriend and I started saving money that I made for our future in an account in his name. When we broke up after a few years, we split the money that was left in the account right down the middle, but this was after he took the money out for a down payment on his new car and braces for his teeth. And I actually agreed to this while I was taking 2 buses to work, because I had a very weird sense of fairness in those days. So fast forward 15 years, and I had dropped out of school, gone through 1 divorce, and was in another bad marriage, and exhibiting a lot of bad behavior. I knew my life was out of control. I was going down a bad road, but didn't know how to course correct. I was also very scared. I had been very good at making a living to support myself, but I could see my actions. It was only a matter of time before my marriage, my job, my family connections, and my life would self-destruct. I think the thing that scared me the most was the potential loss of my livelihood. I just couldn't understand, though, why the results of my effort were so bad when others appeared to be so lucky. My other friends were married, most were raising families, and at least outwardly appeared to be moving on with their lives, but I could not get there. Someone had given me Marcia Stein's phone number, and after carrying it around for about 6 months or so, I phoned her. I had tried a few other therapists, some psychic readers, self-help books. Nothing really caught. My first session with her, however, was like a breath of fresh air. I felt safe, and I knew I was in a good place where I could be heard. When she told me we would have 3 sessions and then discuss where we would go from there, I remember thinking, if she can't help me, I don't know where I'll turn next. I have nowhere else to go. Fortunately, after the third session, she told me I was in the right place to fix my life, and I started on a course that would get me to where I wanted to be. In one of our early sessions, I asked Mrs. Stein for the correct words to use so my husband would get a job. I was a person that wanted control of my life, and I went into therapy thinking that was all I needed, just a few words, a little bit of magic, a couple of sessions, right? She told me not to leave my husband, as I would most likely find someone else very much like him. That was my first aha moment, is I knew in my heart that she was right. I had repeated this pattern before. She also said we would discover what made me search out men like him. And I remember at first being disappointed that, oh no, it's my job. But then I was relieved because I realized that I might actually be able to control the outcome. I felt safe, and when I came to her several months later offering to give up my space in therapy so she could take on a suicidal young man that I was involved with at the time, she told me, no, I was her patient, and my life was at risk. No one had ever taken my side in that way before. She told me that my life was more important than the needier other person. In other words, Karen's life matters. Sorry. I continued through the years to get those aha moments. Along the way, she convinced me, and I fought her hard on this one, to go back to school, and I finished my degree cum laude in 1994. Along the way, she helped me pull out of my feelings and use my very capable brain to solve personal problems. Eventually, I learned the value of making decisions based on thinking and not feeling. Once a thinking decision is made, you can second guess all day long and feel guilty and miserable, but the facts which justified your decision don't change. I had found Mrs. Stein and finally had someone to talk to, someone to listen, a voice of reason. But then once I started group, I again found myself on the outside looking in. My first reaction to group was that it was very unfair. I thought everyone should be given equal time. If there were 6 patients in the group and there was a 90-minute group, everybody should get 15 minutes apiece to say what they had on their mind. No interactions, please. This is not the Bob Newhart show. As stated on the IIGP blog, though, about when it talks about group therapy, thank you so much. I was going to bring a box. I mean, what's a therapy session without a box of Kleenex? No person can really see how they look, behave, and interact with others unless multiple mirrors are held up for viewing. I think that's beautifully said about group therapy. Another thing about my early years in therapy, I did not want to know anything personal about my therapist. I didn't want to share her with others, didn't want to know if she had children or a husband, wanted her in the office just there for me. In group, if she spent any time with another patient or talked to them lovingly, I was sure that I had been forgotten about. Eventually, I came to realize that she had a great capacity in her heart for both me and others. The most significant change that happened along the way was with my eyesight. As my depression lifted, so did an opaque film I looked through, and I could see things and people in clear focus for the first time ever. You can imagine my surprise, as I did not know my sight was impaired in that way. It was more dramatic than when I got glasses for the first time and could actually see individual leaves on trees and was able to read street signs clearly. It was more dramatic than that. In the year 1993, after seeing the movie Schindler's List, I came into my session bemoaning the fact that unlike Mr. Schindler, I wasn't doing anything important in my life. She looked at me and said, "How do you know you don't have a list?" People whose lives you have touched along the way or impacted in some way. Not long after that, one of my employees gave a touching endorsement of my impact on her development, both personally and professionally, that helped me realize that what Mrs. Stein said was true. I took a big step forward in self-love that day. Since that time, I have had to remind myself of that, and one of the benefits of my therapy is being able to see it. There did come a very rough time when I was deeply entrenched in feeling sorry for myself. And some of you may know about this time in my life. I thought my group hated me, not realizing they were frustrated with my insistence on being a victim and refusing to grow up. My fellow group members told me to quit therapy. They told my therapist she was taking my money unfairly. Even some of her colleagues suggested that she let me go. I think I was testing her really hard to see if she would throw me away, but I also knew she wouldn't give up on me. My idea of self-love was to feel sorry for myself. Who would I be if I gave up my identity as a victim? So for a while, I hated going to group, but I knew I had to continue. I wasn't going to go backward. And I knew that if Mrs. Stein and I hung in there, I would make it through this last big hurdle. Eventually, I knew it was time for me to leave group, but Marcia Stein had been a constant in my life for over half of it, and it seemed silly to sever a tie that was so close and important to me. I still see her individually, and I attend extended sessions when I can. I love the richness I get out of being so intimate with others, and seeing their courage and fortitude is another reminder of all that I have accomplished. Over the past 5 years, I have walked through some difficult times with major changes, including the death of both parents, death of a spouse, and retiring from my job of 20 years. Additionally, I decided to completely remodel my house. This from a person who is scared of change. I am considered the voice of reason in my family, and not surprisingly, am the executor of both my parents' and my husband's estates. 2 years ago, I was asked and accepted to be on the board of this institute where I proudly serve. I have spent several months thinking about what I wanted to say and how to deliver my message to you. And the reflections I have had are both rich and painful. I am grateful for all that I have gained over the years: self-love and acceptance, being comfortable in my own skin, being able to appreciate my honesty and sense of humor. I have always wanted to live my life with ease and grace. And for the most part, I can do it. Self-doubt is still there when I forget who I am today, as are the normal struggles of life. But the tools I have gained are also there to call on. I have also thought about the depth and breadth of my relationships and the really true, rich friendships I have now. I have also learned, hopefully, how to tell a good story. I have talked to a number of others, some of them in this room, about their journey, and realized that even though the place we all start from is different, and our key takeaways are very individual, the journey, while long, has been and continues to be rich. I wish for all of you the time and reflection to think about your own journey, and that my comments tonight have brought you back some of your own rich memories and the value of the trip. Thank you.